Hi, I'm Will Grant. For the past 20 years or so, I've been a Latin American expert at the BBC, most of those based in the field as a correspondent, currently here in the Cuban capital, Havana. And in that time, I've traveled to pretty much every country in the region, had some fascinating experiences and covered amazing stories and met incredible individuals. And I felt like the time was right to try to pull together some of those experiences in my forthcoming book, Populista, the rise of the Latin American 21st century strongman. Now, you don't need to be an avid follower of Latin American politics to have seen that there have been some pretty controversial and colourful figures to have emerged in the region in recent years. They range across the political spectrum, from socialist president of Venezuela Hugo Chavez to the former army captain Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. In each case, parties became secondary to individuals, and the leaders themselves were raised to an almost saint-like status among their fervent followers. Now, many of them emerged in what I think was probably the most important political phenomenon in the region in the 21st century, the swing to the left known as the pink tide. And I'm particularly interested in 6 individuals: Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, President Lula Ignacio da Silva in Brazil, President Evo Morales in Bolivia, Rafael Correa in Ecuador, Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, and here in Cuba, Fidel Castro. I've interviewed several of those leaders while they were either in power, while they're in exile, or even in prison. And what I've tried to show is that there are great differences between them as individual leaders and their political projects, despite sometimes being painted as a monolithic or homogeneous group. But Populista isn't just a biography of 6 individuals, it's an attempt to look at the contemporary history of Latin America as a whole, how the issue of caudillismo and populism rose in the region, and a look at some of the long dark shadows left by the military dictatorships of the 1960s, 70s and 80s, and the civilian governments which followed them. Latin America has all too often been depicted in the most simplistic of terms: drugs, guns, violence and corruption, for example, and I hope Populista tries to throw a little light and shade on that image. Hopefully I've managed to paint a picture of a complex and multifaceted part of the world, using testimony from eyewitnesses and interviews with the protagonists themselves, thoughts from their family members and their enemies, from their supporters and their staunch opponents, interviews from the shanty towns of Latin America and the corridors of power.